is Master Chief, a question that I have been asked and thought about myself many times over the last, I don't know, 20 years? Something like that. Halo! Halo was next in the gauntlet, as Chris has been attacking me constantly for, I don't know, years now to play Halo. It's one of his favorite franchises, so unsurprising when it came to Chris's choice during the gauntlet that it was Halo. We played the CE edition. I'm not even sure what it means, collector's edition or anniversary edition or whatever. As part of that is now bundled into something called the Master Chief Collection, which has like Halo, Halo 2, ODST, 3, 4, and a bunch of Reach. It has like 5 or 6 games bundled in there. All right, before we get to Halo itself, I have a bone to pick with Microsoft. You guys are... I bet there's somebody out there, and maybe we'll even type in these comments to justify this, as it seems, even from Chris's response to this, that there's some level of, like, defensive nature that comes up about Halo, probably because they want you to enjoy it and have fun. But this is the most obnoxious system I've ever seen in my life. Let me explain it to you. Halo is on Game Pass, not surprisingly. It's Microsoft, right? And so I was like, okay, I want to play Halo 1. Cool. That's part of the Master Chief Collection, as I said. Okay, so you go there, and then you click on that, and then it'll give you a menu. It'll, like, pop up as you would expect with a bundle of games, which is what this is. Which pieces of this do you want? And it'll just list off the games. So I unselected the games I'm not going to be playing. Makes sense, right? There are any number of reasons I wouldn't want to install those games. Perhaps I've played them before and I don't like them. Perhaps I played them recently, I don't want to replay them. Perhaps I have limited drive space, so I don't want to install all those games. And all these reasons. So I unselected what I didn't want and clicked go. And then I see, because of course we're in the middle of the stream, which made this even more frustrating, 130, 160, something like that, gigabyte download starting. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This game is from like 2001. There ain't no way in hell that this game is like 160 gigabytes. So I'm looking at it, and it's been like a couple of minutes, and we're at like 5% or something, and it's like, okay, we've done like, you know, 12 gig, and we've still got a long way to go. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? I was like, this doesn't make sense. Right? And then some people in my chat, because I did it rather quickly, were like, I'm pretty sure you didn't select the right thing, blah, blah, blah. So, like, all right. So I close it. I cancel the download. So I'm not sitting here for that. It's going to take like maybe 20, 30 minutes, right? We're on gigabit download here, but it depends on Game Pass and all kinds of things. So I go back in, and sure enough, the menu pops up again. And sure enough, I had selected, I think, the right things. However, we then look a little closer. And what we realize is the way this works, which is just insanity, is that all the files, all the games you deselect are actually only 10 megabytes. Because they're just the executables. What you cannot do, for whatever reason, at least that we could find in a simple amount of time on Game Pass, is just install the game you want to play. Instead, what it does is it installs every single game, and then you can tell it not to install the executable for that game. Why? Absolute insanity, because they've all been like remastered, up-res, massive 4K textures, which has created this absolutely bloated monstrosity of a game installation. And so I'm looking at this, I'm like, wait a minute. So what this system does is it actually installs all 6 games, all remastered, and seemingly you can't tell it not to do that. But what you can tell it do is not install the executable. They were all identical. It was like 10.2 megabytes. And why would you do that? That's crazy. So then people were like, the Steam version doesn't work that way. The Steam version works in the way we would expect, which is like, hey, you bought a game bundle, but you only want to play these. All right, we'll go to Steam. So I ended up buying it. Even though it's free for me on Game Pass. Free. I ended up buying it on Steam just because I'm not sitting here for like 30, 40 minutes waiting for a game to install, right? I can react handy, but I don't want to do that. I want to play Halo. All right, so I go to Steam and I buy the game. Once again, it's part of the Master Chief Collection, even though I've just bought that game. And so I click install on Steam for this. It then starts a 36 gigabyte download. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it's not 150 or whatever, but I mean, sure. And the Steam download is working way faster, for their servers are better or whatever. So that installs it. I then get into it, and it's this big launcher that then lists all the games. And I click on Halo 1, click it, and then it says, you do not have this game. I'm like, excuse me? Do you want to download the game? I'm like, what the hell did I click download on before? Click it. And what it is, the way this works, is they have, and this is what's really hilarious, a near 40 gigabyte launcher. That's what it is. It's a launcher that probably has a bunch of textures and stuff for all the games, which is similar to what Microsoft's doing. It probably has a bunch of crossover information. And then you get that, and you don't have any of the games at that point. And then it downloads the game, and the game is like 7 gigabytes. So you have to install a 40 gig launcher for a 7 gigabyte game. And what made this even more interesting, and I'm going to get this out of the way now because it's what you're going to be seeing on screen. What they've done is actually quite cool. When you're playing the game, if you just press tab on your keyboard, it will instantaneously swap you between the remastered, reimagined version of the game graphically and the classic original version that came with the Xbox. I'm going to put this out there now because it's not reflective of the game itself, but what an absolute... I have never seen a bigger waste of time, resources, and manpower, and talent and skill than the graphical update they did for Halo original, the Halo 1. Because it is just, in my opinion, worse. Way worse. There are so many areas that they just... Like, this is supposed to be a dark, spooky jungle with ominous atmosphere. If you swap to the graphics, it's very bright. It's nice and clear. It's got all these big lens flares and blooms, which actually do not work. And the turrets are especially egregious, because when you get man a turret, one of the Covenant turrets, and you fire them, in classic graphics, you just see the balls landing, so you can see what you're shooting at. If you swap to the modern graphics, it has this massive, like, Michael Bay, J.J. Abrams flare all over it that, like, covers the entire area you're trying to shoot, and you can't see what you're trying to shoot at all in any way. If you... There's supposed to be these open jungle fights that you're fighting the Covenant in. If you swap to the modern graphics, it's filled to the brim with really pretty foliage that now just obscures the enemies. And their gameplay, their AI, still works as it does in Classic, which means they have some crazy AI I'll get to in a minute, where they're dancing around and doing all these cool things, which means in the foliage, it just becomes ridiculous to try and shoot them. And not only that, there's just so much of the atmosphere and elements lost, particularly towards the end of the game, when you're descending into, like, deep into Halo itself, and you're being overtaken by the Flood, is the walls are supposed to be dripping with this goo because the Flood is down there. It's giving you this atmosphere as you're going into the hive, because I did not know, and we'll get to this, that the game was heavily inspired by Aliens, the second film in the Alien franchise. But if you swap to the modern graphics, all that is gone. It's all pristine, clean, beautiful. It's all nice and shiny. And you're like, that's not what they were going for at all. You swap back to Classic, it's like dark. The walls are glowing with goo and blood. Swap to the modern one, just nice, clean, pristine. It looks like it's been freshly polished. What an absolute waste of time. The system itself is great at being able to instantaneously swap between. And I'll admit, for streaming reasons, if we were in a place that was super, super dark, on occasion I would just swap to the modern graphics for a second just to see what the hell we were doing, because you're supposed to be fighting with, like, flashlight. That's what they're going for in this 2001 era, is flashlights from all the Marines, like, circling around, and there's monsters in the trees and in the woods, and there's some that are cloaked and stealth, and you're like Predator, and you're like, oh, that's what they're going for. But it's supposed to be pitch black. You're supposed to get, like, the reflections of the torches going in the woods to give this idea. But if you swap to the modern one, it's just nice and bright. It might as well be midday. What an absolute waste of time that was. Either way, those are my technical complaints. Let's get those out of the way. Let's talk about Halo. So, going into this, I literally knew nothing about Halo at all. I thought, based on what I'd seen, that Halo was... I'm not even sure. I had many thoughts over the years about what Halo actually was. I'd seen the ring in promo material, like the advertisements for the new games, but I remember thinking it's a spaceship-based thing, where like a space marine type character who Master Chief is, and the silent sort of protagonist that was going around, which he's not, he talks, and it was going to be like on spaceships and things like that, which that does happen briefly, but it's not what the game is about. So... Colour me surprised when the game does start. I should really clarify why I never played Halo 1. By the time Halo came out in 2001, I believe it's 2001, I had just, probably like 3 years earlier, completely ingrained into the PC world. And I was locked in there. I was completely locked in, and console, that was my console peasant era of looking at what people were doing on consoles and just being kind of laughing at it compared to what I had. Because we had Half-Life 1, right? The idea of the story-based FPS was already done a couple of years earlier on PC, and better. And I still stand by that now, having played Halo 1, is like, Half-Life is superior, although it doesn't do things that Halo does, which Halo does much better. So I was already in that world, right? I was locked in, and then my friends have got these giant mega, remember the original Xbox Fat controller, the graphics are kind of crap, and I'm like, dude, what I have at home is infinitely better than this, and I was just not interested in Halo at all. Probably a little jealous about, like, GTA and things like that they were getting, but ultimately shooters on a console, compared to what I had with mouse and keyboard, not interested at all. And from that point on, I never got into the Halo franchise whatsoever. So getting into it. Wow. First of all, massive shout outs to what Bungie did in 2001. Like, it is very apparent in the first 30 minutes how far ahead of the rest of the world, outside of like niche spectacular games like Half-Life, they were with Halo. The enormous open sprawling worlds, very limited loading going on in any way, shape or form. Vehicle combat that works pretty damn well. It's not perfect, but pretty damn well. Big open firefights. And certainly playing into that teenage power fantasy of being the Marines, you know, hoorah, let's get some Marine, all that going on. And they nailed it. Also, the introduction, I believe, of the 2-weapon system. Brief mention on that, because it's been a hot topic between me and Chris recently, is like, that era of FPS 2-weapon systems was the worst period ever for me, leading up to probably it started to die out around Bioshock Infinite. Certainly Duke Nukem Forever did it absolutely the worst because they didn't get it. It's a prime example of a game implementing a system that makes sense for them, which they did with Halo, and then these other companies going, that's kind of cool, let's do that, and not understanding the fundamental reason why that system was implemented in the first place. Because they all had shoulder buttons. It wasn't the end of the world to swap between weapons. Like, we'd already seen things like Doom and Quake appear on, like, the Super Nintendo. Like, it existed in these older consoles because shoulder buttons have existed forever. But they came up with it in Halo because you have an infinite array of weaponry. It's constantly dropping, and you very rarely have to go more than maybe 5 minutes without your favorite weapon. And the other choices are, while not your favorite, generally not bad. Generally not bad. Like, each of them has a use and a purpose, which means you're constantly cycling through weapons because they keep feeding them to you, and there's only what, like 6 weapons in the game, maybe? I'm trying to think. Pistol, rifle, plasma gun, charge blast, splinter gun, needler. It's like 5 or 6 weapons in the whole game, and they just constantly drop. There's a huge variety of enemies that all utilize these different weapons, so the 2-weapon system fits. It fits really, really well, but allows you to have limited ammunition so that you do end up They kind of gently, I would say gently push you into utilizing a variety of different weapons. So in Halo, implemented fantastically, and unintentionally responsible for creating a slew of 2-weapon system games that just didn't get it and did it wrong. And Infinite and Duke Nukem Forever are the most hilarious ones to me, because Infinite would make you play for ages without the weapons you actually wanted to play. Like, really annoying. Like, even if you had upgrades for those weapons, you just kind of couldn't get them without being very, very conservative with your ammo. Duke Nukem Forever had a system where bosses could only be killed by one type of weapon. If you've never played it, don't play it, it's bad. But they could only be killed by the Devastator. So all they did in that game was give you a 2-weapon system, and then when you got to a boss, they just had Devastator sat there with a crate of ammo, because you had to use that for some reason. Like, absolutely obnoxious hell. But I was starkly impressed by the beginning of this game. Very, very impressed with how they were configuring it, setting it up. Very Half-Life-ish. I will compare it a lot to Half-Life, because they obviously drew from what Half-Life had done. Of having this introductory sequence, get used to your character, things are kind of fine, and then things descend into chaos and madness. And obviously, the story, this is the weird thing. By modern standards, the story is very tropey and simple. it isn't for 2001, and a lot of the tropes we take away from this are like from here. This is like one of the originators. This is one of the ones that was like, okay, we can have a really good integrated story along with what Valve did. Is like we can make FPS not just shooty nonsense with big guns, you know, Quake, a la Quake and Doom. We can actually build in like an atmosphere, storyline, cutscenes, voice acting, proper voice acting mixed into this that gives you some semblance of being in that movie, and again, drawing from Aliens. So really nice. Then we get the Covenant. What an interesting enemy the Covenant is, especially the risky move of making the grunts almost childlike and simple and goofy and fun, and it giving them silly voices. Yeah, it never got old. I was really surprised by this. Usually when there's some sort of squeaky, obnoxious enemy in a game, I'm going to get like a little fed up with them, like constantly babbling on like Lalafels. Did not happen all the way through the game. I was totally fine. I was like, and actually they were kind of fun, and they were good cannon fodder. They only got beefed up heavily towards the very end. They were just great for like soaking some bullets, and the enemies could work around them and giving that movement and kinetic energy to the gunfights, because you need that in a game that is ultimately an action shooter. Is you want to blow things up, and the gravity, the physics engine that's working here is really fun, especially when you chain grenades together and everything just blows up and it's all going crazy, it's all going nuts. Everything about that was really fun, and these little grunts were great. The actual worst enemy for me, somebody would probably think it's hunters. Hunters are these big hulking, like sturdy, stout fellas, but they have been designed to murder you into the floor, but they have an incredible weakness, which I discovered by accident. Which is they have no armor on their back, and they will die in one hit on their back. Certainly with the pistol. I think it's a couple of shots with other things. But the pistol, which became... The pistol and the shotgun were my favorite weapons by the end, with the plasma pistol being... The white plasma pistol being my alternate there. Is they die in one hit. So you end up doing this sort of hop-over mechanic, cycling them. They have a charge, so you can get behind them, and then just popping them off. Even though they can murder you in one hit, you can outplay them. That was really, really fun. My worst enemy in the game was these blue elites that actually come from the very beginning of the game. They have done some really cool things to give them the impression that they're actively in a firefight with you, but they're also incredibly agile. And you could like just point your gun at them and they will just jump all over the floor. They will duck, they will dive, they will combat roll. They have really clever AI, though. One thing I noticed, I don't think we'll find the clip, is they were coming down a hallway, like a ramped hallway. So I threw a grenade in, because the enemy kept popping out and popping back into the ramped hallway. So I, like, threw a grenade in there. So the enemy ran out of the hallway and then ran around a corner instead of going back where, you know, the predictive AI you would think it would do. That kind of stuff was really cool. Pain in the ass to hit, though. No matter where you're in, they like duck, they dive, they go everywhere else. I'm not the best at FPS. I don't get to play it often enough to be good. And that was really enjoyable. So the enemy variety was sick. I did not know about the flood. I had no idea that that was coming midway through the game. I expected the game to be short. I think I clocked in like 7 hours because it was an old 2001 game. They generally just weren't that big due to file size restrictions. So I was not expecting a brand new third faction to come in midway through the game. And then it switched to a zombie game. I was like, oh, we're going that direction. I was expecting bigger and badder Doom 2016 style, bigger and badder, like, monstrosity Covenant enemies to start showing up. They're going to send, like, the Mega Release, and they're going to send this, this, and this. That didn't happen. They actually locked off the Covenant enemies and then just brought in a brand new faction. I've got to give shout-outs to how heavy Bungie went with the Flood. Certainly by the last sort of quarter of the game. There were corridors I was dealing with that just never seemingly ended. In fact, in a lot of cases, certainly when you're near the pools, I do believe they're just never-ending spawns that will just keep coming if you don't push forward and sort of slash your way through, which is great. You want that feeling of, like, I've got to cut through. It did lead me... I'll come back to this point, actually. It did lead me on a couple occasions to skip some areas, but I'll come back to that. But the Flood itself, especially towards the end, where you're in corridors and the little banelings, which, again, cannon fodder, similar to the grunts. I loved this idea of, like, the enemies have these cheap, nasty enemies that aren't really a threat, but they just give atmosphere and vibe. They're crawling all over the walls, they're coming out of everything, and then you've got the actual ones you want to kill swarming amongst them. It gave great looks. I cannot imagine how fantastic this looked in 2001. It must have been extraordinary. And I was trying to compare it to a modern FPS that's managed to replicate this feeling. I can't really do it. A lot of the things these days do tend to happen in cutscenes where you're being swarmed and you have to run away or something like that. In Halo, they were like, no, you're in this corridor and we're going to send 60 enemies at you. And I'm not joking, maybe 60 plus enemies. And they're just going to funnel into this corridor, which gives you that power fantasy like they base the game on in Aliens of just like hammering away, like, ah! Like murdering and butchering and exploding and throwing away, and throwing grenades in. Just like the whole corridor's exploding. Like, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And it was very clear to me over the course of the game that this is why this was a step forward, why this franchise is loved, because going from what we had at that time, certainly in console world, to this, mind-blowing. You're like, oh my god, this is like the next level. I totally get it. I understand it. What's completely exactly why they did this. Let's talk about the story a little bit. Cliche. They definitely seemingly planned for a sequel, because the ending quote is like, I feel like we're just getting started. So it looks like they planned for a franchise out of this. The story is a little vague, and I was really on board with it. I was on board with the idea that we had Cortana. I mean, there's some logical fallacies here in the story, which, like, by modern standards, where we're dealing with a storyline as complex as, say, Expedition 33, like, wouldn't fly now. But for 2001, I think it's fine. If the whole fleet is run by these AIs on these capital ships, and Cortana's one of those. And Cortana can never fall into enemy hands because Cortana has access to all the information across the fleets. It has everything. It has troop movements. It has fleet positions. It has our outposts. It has all this stuff. So if we get captured, it's all over. And I was like, well, you would obviously have some sort of self-destruct sequence for this AI or something like that, right? You wouldn't even allow that to happen under any... If losing one ship that had an AI on costs you, like, the war, that wouldn't be allowed to happen under any circumstances. If it was like a digital entity, that wouldn't happen. But that's the story. So Cortana's uploaded to a USB, given to Master Chief, and off we go to protect. We have to get off the ship because the Covenant are swarming the ship, and we're going to lose the AI, and that cannot be allowed to happen. And from there, it then integrates into the story of arriving on Halo. I'm not 100% sure. From what I gather, is the Covenant have known about Halo for a very long time. This is one of their planets, and they've been, like, digging around and lurking on there. That's confirmed. And I think we are attacking or approaching a Covenant stronghold, and there's Halo. And we're like, what the hell is this? What is going on? Because we're discovering Halo for the first time. But the Covenant have been there for a long time and worship it. They give it, like, a religious meaning to them. They, like, worship there. And so we investigate Halo, and we're not sure what it is. And then, like, we find out from a data recording that it's a super weapon of some description that the Covenant plans to use to eradicate us. We'll lose the war, so we've got to stop that. And then it turns out that's not the case. This was actually... The Halo was built by the Forerunners a long time ago in a sort of Mass Effect-y vibe. And its actual purpose is to eradicate all biological life to prevent the Flood from spreading. So this is where... That comes later in the story, obviously after the Flood are introduced. And I was like, I'm not sure I like that. Unless, and I was trying to think through, how would this make sense? Because any plan that involves murdering everybody to prevent some people being murdered is not a good plan, generally. Generally speaking. So I was like, unless the Forerunners are so ancient, this is what I think comes from Halo 2, which we'll probably play in the future, is that the Forerunners are so ancient that they were the only ones around when this was all going on. The Flood were discovered and they were building the Halos. They're obviously super technologically advanced. And the human race and the Covenant race might have been in their infancy, so not really worth consideration. So at that point, if they could upload themselves digitally, which seems to be the case, they can upload themselves to a fully mechanical world, then they can safely eradicate all biological life to prevent this swarm from getting out there. Ergo, it's kind of a solution, maybe, because there's apparently Halos all over the galaxy, and they're all positioned so that they can, once they're activated, they can eradicate all life. But our goal then becomes to shut down and destroy Halo, because we can't risk this thing going off, and stop the Flood from spreading, but also not allow Halo to kill everything, because we don't want that to happen either. And work through that whole process. Interesting choice, but correct choice, I think, not to have a final boss fight. Probably learning a bit from Bioshock 1. I'm not sure on the dates they came out. But instead going for a Bioshock 2 solution, which was to have generally a sort of horde waves attacking everywhere moment where you have to fulfill some task, which in this case is overdrive the engine so they'll blow up and destroy Halo. Instead of having one boss fight, just swarms of enemies, constant gunfire, lots of pressure happening, leading into probably some criticisms I do have of the game. The game is not perfect. The drive sequence at the end of the game I felt was unnecessarily long. It wasn't as epic as I think they were hoping for, which was a little bit of a shame. But I was curious about an hour or so in as to how they created such vast open worlds on the original Xbox. I was like, this is crazy, because the games just weren't that huge back then. Like, by modern standards especially. But even then, like, it was the next console generation, so it was better, for sure, but, like, not to the scale we expect in, say, a Titanfall or a Battlefield or something like that. So I was like, wow, these are huge open maps with, like, no loading screen. Like, this is wacky, this is huge, and kind of detailed as well. How have they done this? Then it revealed itself, is that, in fact, the game is go one way for, like, half the game, and then come back through the exact same levels again. It was like, ah, okay. So they did it by utilizing the same areas twice for the vast majority of the game. Okay. And they also needed to pad the length out. There was a section that got extremely tiresome for me, which was moving... some people probably think I'm saying the library here, but as somebody only did the library once, yes, it got a little tedious towards the end, but it wasn't the end of the world. It was actually just moving through the various towers with the exact same layouts over and over again. It went bridge into 2 rooms, into corridor, into 2 rooms, into corridor, into 2 rooms, and they were the same layout. You always just were like, you'd look left and right. If it was blocked off to the right, you had to do a loop around it because they were just circular rooms. Run around the left side, and then you could just... And essentially, the way it works, every checkpoint you hit, the enemies just stop attacking you. After like 10 or 12 of this, because it goes on for a long time, I was like, I'm just kind of going to run through there because... Not fun. Not fun to do this stuff. And essentially, at that point, in these sections specifically, I killed most things throughout the game, but in these sections specifically, I only stopped to fight if there was like, oh, there's 3 shotgun guys at the end that just can one bang you completely. So I was like, I'm not going to... okay, we'll kill those, but generally speaking, I want to get this section over and done with because it's tedious and lost. And then... God forbid when the game like, oh, you reached the core, you did this, turn around and go back. And it was the same rooms again. I was like, no, dude, we're doing the same rooms again. It makes sense why it worked this way. I do think it creates a sort of padding scenario where they wanted to hit that 7 to 10 hour mark. Obviously, huge amount of replayability here with the skulls and all that kind of stuff and going up to legendary difficulty. But yeah, that was a moment for me where I was like, I don't often skip in games, certainly content. Usually I follow my Dark Souls mantra as we kill everything once and then I'm fine to run through it afterwards. But this time I was like, I am done doing these same rooms over and over again because it's a real shame. Because of the limitations of 2001, they couldn't really create more. Every game like this is linear, right? It's all really one path that is misshapen and changed to give you the illusion that it's not. But it is. But we know that. We're not stupid. We always end up going from A to B. It's just that the way you get there is always, you know, mixed up and maze-like. That's good level design. But they couldn't really do that with the limitations of the hardware back then. And they can't decorate either, which is interesting. So the rooms are identical. They're literally copy-paste is how they want to do it with maybe some different enemy placements. But they're copy-pasted, which then allows them to, like, keep that loaded. And, you know, all the, like, back-end that's going on is, like, actually this saves us a ton of space. And gives some longevity to the game, because you're going to have to run through all this kind of stuff, and it's not going to be a 2-hour game doing this for the average playthrough. So I get it. It just got very tiresome on my eyes. That's all. I was like, this is just... I feel like I've been in this room now for like an hour. Like, that's how it felt. So that would be another negative mark, but understandable negative mark, right? Like, it's not like, oh, yeah, this is lazy design. No, this is them being constricted by the options they had at the time. They can't fully furnish and individually paint every single wall with slight detail and gunfire and burn marks and different posters and this crate goes here, this goes here, and like really like they do now. You look at like a cabin. I think I saw a UE5 demonstration of how they built a cabin for like Last of Us 2, and some world artist is spending like 3 or 4 weeks designing this wooden cabin with all the right gravity and flowers and things. Yeah, they couldn't do that back then. Overall, man, it was so nice to see one of these genre-defining games, is what I would describe Halo as, in its glory. And also, in a happy way, being preferable to play it on its classic graphics, because they were just better. They suited the game more. They were, again, similar to the 2 weapon system. they were fit for purpose for what they were trying to achieve at the time. Whereas the modern version, the remastered version, or whatever you want to call it, missed that point entirely. And in fact, in several areas, completely destroyed the atmosphere and intention of the area you were in. And I don't know why that decision was made. It was crazy. It's like, this is absolutely not what the game is trying to deliver to you in terms of feeling. It wants spooky moments, action moments, and you just whitewash those. Very weird. But great to play these genre-defining games. Next on the list is Katamari Damacy. I think that I'm pronouncing that right. This is Edrum's pick. We haven't had Nupps' pick yet in the gauntlet. But I'm doing really well. 2 out of 4 is done. And I still have plenty of time on the clock. So, thumbs up. Halo, everybody. Goodbye.